All right, every Monday, as you know, it's your chance to throw some topics into the mix with my good friend Alan Jones. It could be anything. We're not fussy. Maybe it's not even COVID. One thing in the media today, though, you will have picked up is this story about Australia's impending rice crisis. Now, this isn't news. It's been coming for years and years and years once we started to deny growers a proper water allocation. We're told today that rice production in Australia is down 80%, with the CEO of Sunrice, Rob Gordon, predicting that we're going to run out of Australian rice by Christmas. Now, they've slashed a third of their 600-strong workforce in the Riverina. We want jobs in country Australia. These jobs are going. Alan Jones, I'll bring you in now. You've predicted for a long time, if we don't have water, we don't have agriculture.
Well, this has been an ongoing disgrace. Basically, we have the most productive and most efficient rice industry in the world. It used to produce about 500,000 tonnes of rice. The estimates for last year were 59,000 tonnes, not 500,000, and so consequently the issue today is whether or not we're going to have to maintain supply here by importing from Vietnam, and with all the problems about coronavirus and so on. Now, this goes back a long way because you're right, Peter, it is a question of water. Since 1990, the population of Australia has increased by 50%. Our water capacity, retained water, has increased by 3%. And in the middle of drought and everything else, there's an outfit called the Australian Environment Water Holder. It's just unbelievable. That's what it's called. It owns 2,000 gigalitres of water, and every day it flushes down the Murray River 15,000 megalitres of water for quote-unquote environmental flow. So that water is taken away from farmers, and at the end of the day, those rice producers, the Riverina, you're right, there are whole towns, villages and communities going completely out of existence. You could buy a house down there for $24,000. And this is simply because of water. It's because we've got a Murray-Darling Basin plan. The staff on the Murray-Darling Basin scheme are 400 people and know nothing about water. I'm damned if I know whether they know anything about anything at all. But it's about environmental flow. And so the rice industry hasn't had the water. It's had a drought on top of that. And now it's facing the prospect, like we will in all foodstuffs, Peter. We'll face the problem of having to import food from overseas. It's laughable. We've got the most productive and efficient farmers in the world and the best soil. So the rice industry is just a metaphor of a wider problem.
What did you make of quite a lot of debate today? Obviously, we don't have enough fruit pickers. We don't have all the seasonal workers that are moving around. People are saying, let's extend the visas for the backpackers because, A, there's a whole gamut of Australians who are getting the double dole and they just don't want to work.
Correct.
But those that do want to work can't cross these state borders. Now, we know some of the states that have got their borders closed, like WA, like Queensland.
But WA...
When the Agriculture Minister says let's import some workers in on the seasonal program from overseas, they're happy to take the foreign workers, but they're not going to lift the drawbridge and let any Australian who wants these jobs come over the border.
Well, that's interesting what you said about WA. Now, WA, of course, have closed the border, and most West Australians, you've got to be honest, they think it's terrific. Life in WA is absolutely normal. But there are 7,000 jobs available, as I speak to you, Peter, in WA for harvesting and fruit picking and so on. And if they can't get those, then the product rots. And this is the real problem about this lockdown. I'll be looking tonight at this hospitality industry. But common sense will tell you, if we close down the hospitality industry, which we virtually have, then who buys the beef, who buys the fruit, who buys the eggs, who buys the bread, who buys the lettuce? And if there's no need for that stuff, then the product stays in the ground. So there's two problems here. What we want, we can't pick and harvest because we don't have the water. I noticed that John Alexander, the Davis Cup player and now member of the Federal Parliament, I thought made a very good point the other day, and he said, well, why don't we give people in jail? There's a lot of young people in jail on white-collar crime. Give them a remission on their sentence or a reduction on their sentence. Get them out to pick the fruit and to do the work that needs to be done for productive Australia to stay productive. Now, I don't think it's a silly idea. And he said the grey nomads as well. Now, there are limits, as you know, for the grey nomads as to what they can earn to be able to continue to qualify for the pension. We'll waive all of that and say, listen, if you're prepared to go out into the bush while you're in the caravan and do some work, fruit picking or harvesting or whatever, earn whatever you want, and they can get $1,000 a week and it won't affect the pension that you take. So there are ways around all of this, but it's going to need some creative thinking.
Yeah, it's just criminal, though, that the taxpayers paying $1.5 million people to stay at home on the double dole.
Yes.
And we've got these jobs going begging.
Well, that's a very good point. See,
So,
Peter, the JobKeeper and JobSeeker now, that bill is over $100 billion. $100 billion. For God's sake, to do nothing.
My reckoning, that's about 5 Bradfield schemes.
That's it.
About 5 Bradfield schemes. Just one quick one. A lot of people write on my Facebook page, this is the question most asked, what can we do? Now that we've had a good look at the states, now we've had a good look at the quality or not on the front bench and all the powers that they have, I think people are waking up to, who they vote for in a state election. But they're wanting to see, is there any way that the federal government can have powers, if required, in these sorts of emergencies to step in cases like Victoria, where the government's sending us backward?
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I have both been there. On this issue, I feel very sorry for Scott Morrison, because the nation's expecting Morrison to provide an answer, and his constitutional limitations are there for everyone to see. What I think, though, Scott needs to do is to bite the bullet, call the Parliament back, introduce legislation that gives the Commonwealth power to overrule the states on the issues that are now affecting the ongoing development of life and productivity and livelihoods, and let the Labor Party vote against it. Let the Labor Party in the Senate knock it off. Let the Greens knock it off, and they'll be politically dead. Because Australia are wanting to say now, come on, we know who the vulnerable are, we know how to look after them, we know that 99% of the cases are mild, there's a whole heap of people who get it but it won't affect them, like Peter Dutton. Now, let's open the economy and get on with things, but he can't. Now, Scott Morrison, to be fair to him, said months ago the kids should be allowed to go to school and the borders should not be closed. He said that long ago. Now, he's been openly defied by premiers. If I were him, I would go back into the federal parliament, seek the appropriate powers, he'll get the best constitutional advice, and let the other side vote against it and let them live with the odium of keeping Australia closed down.
Jen, in another life, who would have ever thought you were a political strategist as you were for a Prime Minister? I hope they were taking dictation down in Canberra. Alan Jones, look forward to seeing you at 8 o'clock.
Okay, bye-bye.